Now, I think the first time that I ever saw our next speaker, I must have been probably about a year 8 in school, sitting on the wooden parquet floor of Bayside Drama Studio as he would perform sketches and plays and all sorts of things, and looking up and admiring his work. The stage really, really misses him, so it's a pleasure to welcome him back to it. Please welcome Selwyn Figueras.
Good afternoon, everyone. At this point in the day, you'll all be sitting a little less comfortably than you were when you walked in this morning, and that's okay, because what we're about to talk about today isn't comfortable either. We might all even find these next few minutes quite tough. I mean, I know I will. Talking about this issue of the use of social media by children is tough, yes, but it is definitely not as difficult to handle as the feeling you get as a parent the very moment you've given a child their first phone, that feeling that you're starting to lose your child. It is tough to talk about this because it's uncomfortable and because we can't begin to fathom that there is a different way to deal with this. But it's not tougher than watching on helplessly as your child sinks deeper and deeper into a social media-induced obsession with a little screen in front of them, no? So yes, of course it's tough. But is there anything tougher than in a matter of just a few days after you hand them their first smartphone and access to social media to watch the light fade from your daughter's eyes? Leaving that image up there as a reminder of what's at stake, I am going to talk about the fact that social media is dangerous, and I'm going to talk about how it is especially damaging for children, and the kids are not okay. It's not our fault. As grown-ups, as parents, as carers, it's not our fault. But we can do something about it. We have to do something about it. I spent a long time reflecting on why social media is so bad for us, especially for children. You know, at first it almost seems silly to go on a crusade over memes, TikToks, and jokes. It all feels so light-hearted, right? Just harmless fun. Deja que el niño use el teléfono. But that's the trick. The shits and giggles are just the decoy. Social media, it's what's behind all that, that's the danger. Social media is addictive by design. Oh, and hang on. Before any of you think about heckling me, I am an addict as well. Of course I am. Everyone is. But hey, look, I used to smoke too, and I always knew that that was bad for me. So it didn't disqualify me from, as it doesn't do anyone else, saying how bad it is. The real danger of social media for children isn't just addiction. It's how it rewrites the way children measure their self-worth. Internal validation has been replaced by an external one. Intrinsic self-worth takes a back seat to the opinion of the online crowd. It takes a village to raise a child, not a crowd. Certainly not this brutal, unrelenting, and unforgiving one. Children are learning that their worth depends almost entirely on the approval of anonymous strangers, an approval which is then amplified and manipulated by machines. It's the weaponization of validation for profit. It's the return of the public execution, yes. Ask any child excluded from their friend's WhatsApp group what that feels like. It leaves them nowhere to hide, no privacy, no mental or emotional safe space. Even at home, their phones follow them into the bedroom, into the bathroom, demanding their attention. It's harassing them from the moment they open their eyes in the morning to the very last conscious thought as they fall asleep at night. And they can never get enough, no? Que cosa, no? No amount of likes will ever be enough. It's like chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Then there's the illusion of belonging. Social media promises connection, but instead it isolates. Kids today aren't connecting, they're performing. And when they make mistakes, as kids of course will do, social media will make sure that they are punished for it. Their mistakes will become the next viral video or meme, amplified and never forgotten. Smartphones were meant to work for us, and they do in so many ways, but instead they have enslaved us. Big tech designed them this way, of course. At first, we got them all for free, just like the drug dealer on a street corner giving you the first hit on the house. But there is a price. The price is our addiction, the addiction that fuels their growth. As adults, we're racked with anxiety and self-doubt, but we're unable to stop scrolling. We're taking 1,000 selfies to find that one perfect picture, hoping desperately for anyone to like it. Social media is a vice as bad as others, but unlike alcohol and tobacco, kids are all over it. Look, the debate about the impact of social media on adults is for another day. But the impact of this on kids is something we have to talk about, because we've had the time to grow up offline. They haven't. They don't. We remember a time before social media, a childhood of play, discovery, and freedom. They've been robbed of that. Is that better than how it used to be? I often hear people arguing that it's not that bad, that it's not a serious issue really. But we all know deep down inside that the kids are not okay. How much more do we need to see and hear before we act? We know this is a crisis. The evidence is overwhelming. Only the tech companies will tell you that it's not, by the way. An expert in this field called Jonathan Haidt does a great job of explaining what it is that's happened in this book he wrote called The Anxious Generation. He describes it as a transition from a play-based childhood to a phone-based one. For generations, he says, childhood was about real-world play, exploration, and face-to-face connections in la calle. Then parents became progressively more worried about what might happen to their kids if they went outside, and so they stayed in more. They watched more TV. In the late 90s and early 2000s, mobile phones took off as a thing, and then in 2007, the iPhone was born. Facebook had already started out in 2004, but the smartphones would turbocharge the progress of social media. So despite the arrival of the iPhone in 2007, according to the figures, mental health figures kind of looked as you might have expected them to look until about 2012. At that point, all over the world, mental health went off a cliff. So what had happened? Why was that year the tipping point? The smartphone now had a selfie cam. Wi-Fi and data connectivity became ever more available and faster, of course. And in a move designed to grab and hold our attention as hard as possible, the newsfeed algorithm was deployed. It's been a slow-motion mental health car crash in progress ever since. Since then, teen depression and anxiety disorder rates have doubled in the US, the UK, and other Western countries. Suicide rates among girls have nearly tripled. This isn't coincidence. This is causation. And of course, there's also the massive issue of harmful content. And what can harmful content do to a child? Well, look, I said this was going to be tough, and this is about as tough as it's going to get. You might have heard last week about that 18-year-old man who was sentenced to the longest non-life order sentence of 52 years in prison for murdering 3 children and attempting to murder another 8, all of whom were doing nothing more than participating in a summer Taylor Swift dance class in July last year. What drives a person to do things so unspeakably heinous? A number of things, of course. One thing you learn from reading the coverage of the case is that he was somehow fascinated by killing. This man, who hadn't actually yet turned 18 when he did what he did, decided to slaughter these poor, defenseless children between the ages of 6 and 13 for the simple reason that his fascination had been fed, and the monster had come to need more than just watching or reading about it. I have no doubt that this fascination will have been fueled by the availability on social media of an unending stream of the worst, most vile content you can imagine. Tough, no? Tough for the parents of these kids. One of these kids, B.B. King, she was only 6. She was stabbed 122 times. How much more? And so who's to blame, if not big tech? Well, let's be clear, they know exactly what they're doing. The executives of these companies won't even let their own children use these platforms. And they're also the ones in Washington, in London, and in other capitals lobbying, against age restrictions, watering down safety laws and protecting their profits instead of protecting children. Other countries are moving, though. Australia is leading the charge in moving the age to 16, and the UK is watching closely, but progress is going to be very slow. Our children don't have the time to wait. I believe that this is an emergency, sorry John, more dangerous and more impactful than even the climate emergency. The good news is that we can do something about it. The less good news, as you start to shift in your seats uncomfortably, is that we have to do something about it. As parents, the answer to the question of what can I possibly do is remarkably simple. Delay, delay, delay. If you've got super young kids, any young parents in the audience, just put off, start now, the earlier the better, put off for as long as possible the day when your child gets a smartphone, even longer for social media. Look, it's not an easy thing to do, to not give your child at the age of 11 because every other kid has it, but it's not as hard as you think. I'll give you the example of our family. Our eldest, El Pobre, must have been 7 or 8 years of age when I came across the story of Molly Russell's death in 2017. So Molly Russell had had dinner with her family one school night, got her bag ready for school the next day. Well, she said goodnight, went to bed with her phone and her tablet, and that night she took her own life. So the coroner, in a first-of-its-kind verdict, found that she had taken her own life after consuming harmful content on self-harm and suicide on Instagram, Pinterest, and other platforms. It's terrifying. So I pretty much immediately started telling my eldest, El Pobre, that he could expect to not have a smartphone or social media for a very long time. I didn't say how long that was going to be, but I just said, well beyond what everyone might expect. I told him over and over and explained the reasons why. I was lucky that he was articulate enough, I think, to understand. We all tried also to be the example that he and our youngest could follow. We would try to keep phone use to a minimum at meal times. We would focus on spending time chatting to our kids, and we used technology in as limited a way as possible, but definitely if it was going to be for their benefit. Over and over, day after day, it wasn't perfect. And there is every chance that as parents, we might have tactically used iPads on them when we were flying transatlantic. But then when he went to comprehensive and the pressure ramped up again, it was a bit more difficult for a while, but armed with the Nokia dumb phone that he had been given by me, which he never takes out, by the way, in school because he doesn't want to get beaten up over it, the challenge faded away. And he got on with doing very well in school, of continuing to have a sensible bedtime, not having a phone in front of him all the time, and to continuing to have, and to appreciate, funnily enough, one-to-one, face-to-face conversation with us. The horror. Oh, and before I carry on, let me deal with the elephant in the room. On the matter of smartphones in school, the evidence now, frankly, is beyond question. It is time to ban smartphones in schools, y punto. Every school in every country that has moved in this direction has only experienced massive benefits in attention, in improvement in behaviors, and in the reduction of online bullying. Ya llegó el momento. It just makes sense. Having got that out of the way, I remember clearly the first time that I felt some validation about the choice that we had made as parents about this issue. We were sitting, both my boys and I, in Mamma Mia one Friday evening having pizza, and we'd spent about an hour and a half with my phone in my pocket, just chatting about the things that you would. At one point, my son said to me, "Dad, look at the tables around us. What do you reckon he'd spotted?" So many other people there, just on their phones, just scrolling away, even though they were sat at the table with family and friends, eating alone, really. That was a pretty cool moment. But look, as cool as it was, remember that this is not about never giving in. It's about delaying that moment for as long as possible. I'm not about to stop the tide, but I can keep moving la sombrilla further up against the wall until I can't wait any longer. And you know what? Some companies are helping too, like Nokia. Nokia actually is now owned by a company called HMD, which is, by the by. But last year, I was in touch with their CEO about having a feature phone with some extra features, music streaming, some maps, but none of the bad stuff. He told me that they were working on something, and a couple of weeks later, they announced the Better Phone Project, which was essentially a collaboration between parents, experts around the world over 10 weeks and Zoom sessions until they came up with what they needed to do. And what they needed to do, they know now, is a transition phone. A phone that looks like a smartphone, has the features which make kids' lives better, without none of the ones that actually end up killing them. Importantly, it'll be a phone that you simply can't add stuff to, so that the please dad, please dad, please dad will be of no effect. A phone that is safe out of the box and that you don't have to spend 4 hours putting parental controls that you'll forget about 30 minutes after you've finished doing them. The transition phone could be out at the end of this summer, and if it is out, it's going to be fantastic, because I was very proud to be part of that. I've kept us uncomfortable for long enough, right? And I have really enjoyed this so very much. And so I'm bringing it to a close, not least because I see the timer too. Social media is bad for us. Social media is especially bad for children, not least because studies show that the effects of it will be with them for the whole of the rest of their lives. Either harmful content, bueno, I've said enough today. It's not their fault, and it's certainly not our fault. But we can change how this story ends. There is hope, and change is coming. We can delay a child's introduction to social media. The later, the better. 14 for phones, 16 for social media como mínimo. We can and should model the behavior we want them to see. Tenemos que guardar el teléfono y mira que nos cuesta trabajo. We can also be advocates to other parents and work together for the benefits of the kids. You've given me your time today, and for that I'm very grateful. This is all about us giving them time too, giving them the time to be kids and to grow up on their own terms, giving them time to build a self-worth that is intrinsic, giving them the time to and giving them time to become physiological adults with brains better equipped to deal with everything this world will throw at them. But it's not all about them. This can also be about giving yourselves time. The time for you to enjoy your children at their most wondrous. The time, I knew this was going to be difficult. The time for you to be the ones who teach them, to watch them grow as you guide them in their first steps, good and bad. Above all, it's the time to love and be close to them before all too quickly, all the grown-up stuff takes over and the most special time you will have ever had with them is gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much there, Selwyn Figueras, for giving us so much to think about.